revising the GOP health care plan.
This at least is a solid proposal.
Top White House officials make an offer to members of the House Freedom Caucus. Syrian conflict. A suspected chemical attack kills dozens, including children. Strangers in a strange land. Archbishop Charles Chaput of Philadelphia joins me in studio to talk about living the Catholic faith in a post-Christian world and bringing joy to children in Haiti. We're on the ground with a Catholic group helping those in the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, April 4th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The administration is offering an Obamacare repeal compromise, and hardline conservative House Republicans are considering it. Correspondent Jason Calvi reports from Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, I spoke to the leader of the conservative House Freedom Caucus, the group that helped bring down the original GOP health care bill. President Trump last week threatened to oppose their re-elections if they didn't get on board. But the group's leader tells me he's expecting a resolution of this health care conflict very soon.
The vice president brought the House Freedom Caucus a deal last night.
Did you reach a deal?
North Carolina Representative Mark Meadows leads the group.
It's too early. I can tell you that all of the Freedom Caucus members who are no's are willing to get to yes if the conditions are right.
About 36 hard-right Republicans helped tank the original GOP healthcare bill, saying it didn't go far enough in repealing Obamacare.
We started out with 6 requests. We're down to 2. So we have moved the goalpost, but we've moved it closer to a solution.
Congressman Rod Blum of Iowa is a member of the Freedom Caucus who points to the problems Obamacare is having in his state.
Less choices, which means ultimately when there's less choices, the prices always go up.
The largest provider of Obamacare plans in Iowa is pulling out of the exchanges in 2018, citing double-digit premium increases and $90 million losses for the company.
We should have hundreds, if not thousands, of choices to pick from. And we don't need the government saying every policy should include this or not include this.
The White House proposal would allow states to apply for federal waivers from several Obamacare requirements, including one that insurers must cover so-called essential health benefits, which includes mental health, maternity, and drug abuse services. But Speaker Ryan is lowering expectations.
Right now, we're just at that conceptual stage.
The original GOP Obamacare repeal also would have defunded Planned Parenthood for 1 year. The head of the conservative Republican study committee tells me that's still in the compromise. Lauren?
Jason, when should we know if Republicans will get the 216 votes needed for it to pass?
Well, the Freedom Caucus wants the White House offer in writing. Some Republicans are optimistic they'll be able to vote on the health care compromise before they break for their Easter recess at the end of this week.
White House Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thank you, Jason. The full Senate begins debating President Trump's Supreme Court pick. Democrats have the votes to block Judge Neil Gorsuch's confirmation, but Republicans are expected to change Senate rules.
I hope we don't get to that. I really do. And if Neil Gorsuch if he were a marginal candidate, if he were some chucklehead, I would say, okay, you know, let's talk about it. But this guy's a legal rock star.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also is vowing that Gorsuch will be confirmed on Friday. A top Obama official denies using intelligence to spy on President Trump's advisors. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice says it's absolutely false. She used her power while in office for political purposes. This after reports Rice ordered the unmasking of aides and staffers of the incoming president. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby is at the White House. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Susan Rice is one of the few people in the Obama administration in a position to request this unmasking. That means revealing the identity of an American speaking with or mentioned by a foreigner as part of a conversation intercepted by U.S. intelligence officials. Now, 2 Republican senators are calling for an investigation.
She did have the authority to do it. What was the motivation for doing it, I think, is the question.
Republican Senator John McCain is calling for a select committee to investigate Susan Rice's motives for allegedly unmasking individuals connected to the transition team and campaign for Donald Trump before he took office. Those names inadvertently collected while U.S. intelligence agencies were legally monitoring others.
I want to know why their names were unmasked. If it was political, that's wrong.
An important question because usually those names remain hidden. Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky questions if the directive came from President Obama and calls on Rice to answer questions. But Rice denies making any requests for political purposes. She says, quote, "I leaked nothing to nobody." Her response comes as House and Senate Intelligence Committees investigate Russian meddling into the U.S. election and possible Trump campaign ties.
It's going to be following the facts wherever those facts go and then giving us a real account, all things Russia-related, to the American people.
Democrats are pushing back.
This is something that came out of thin air, another deflection of what our real charge and responsibility should be, and that is investigating the Russia connection to the Trump campaign and their infiltration into our elections.
To Trump backers, the revelations are evidence that the Obama administration was surveilling the incoming administration for political purposes. White House spokesman Sean Spicer calls the latest information, quote, troubling. He says if people were leaking this information, it's treasonous, but it's not for him to decide if Susan Rice should have to testify. Lauren?
How did this information about Susan Rice first come to light?
Lauren, after the inauguration, a U.S. official says Trump's National Security Council began an intelligence policy review that included looking into how widely raw intelligence and the names of Americans were disseminated. So Rice's unmasking requests were found during that review, and according to this official, who insists on remaining anonymous. Lauren? And
anonymous is also very important here. Oh, all right. Wyatt Goolsbee at the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A suspected chemical attack in northern Syria kills dozens of people. It's one of the worst attacks in the country's 6-year civil war, with dozens dead, including 11 children. Eyewitnesses say the chemicals were dropped on the town by jets operated by the Russian and Syrian governments. Moscow and Damascus both deny responsibility. The Archbishop of Moscow condemns the St. Petersburg subway attack, calling it a villainous terrorist attack. Investigators identified the suicide bomber as a man in his early 20s from Kyrgyzstan. Yesterday's explosion killed 14 people and wounded dozens more. Police defused a second, larger explosive hidden in a fire extinguisher. And a teenager from New Jersey is admitting to plotting to kill Pope Francis when the Holy Father visited Philadelphia in 2015. Santos Colon Jr. pleaded guilty as an adult to attempting to provide material support to terrorists. Colon admits to plotting the assassination in the weeks leading up to the Pope's visit. He engaged someone he thought would be the sniper, but really was an undercover FBI agent. Prosecutors did not reveal a motive for the plot or why the Pope was targeted. Pope Francis is welcoming Prince Charles and Camilla to a private meeting at the Vatican today. The visit is part of their 9-day tour to 3 European countries to reinforce relations as Brexit begins. EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent Mary Shevlin is one of just a few journalists invited to witness the royal arrival. She joins us from Rome. Mary, what was the focus of the discussion with Pope Francis?
Lauren, we know the two leaders have quite a lot in common. They both are very concerned about the situation of Christians around the world. We know they're very concerned about the environment. These are issues that they have found that they can work on together, Catholics and Protestants, from Prince Charles and the Pope all the way down church hierarchy to the faithful. So I think focusing on what they had in common, focusing on peace, of course, what they can do in their respective worlds and situations to promote peace. In fact, Pope Francis gave the Prince a medallion, a depiction in bronze of an olive branch, and said, may you always be a man of peace wherever you go. And for their part, the royals gave Pope Francis some produce that they produced right there in their Highgrove estate, and Camilla assured Pope Francis that it was all very good.
Excellent. Is there an ecumenical impact of this visit?
There is, Lauren. As we know, the reigning monarch in England is always the head of the Church of England, and the two churches have been separated since the year 1534, and the churches remain separated. So there's always an ecumenical aspect whenever the royals come to visit at the Vatican. But we know that Pope Francis has reached out just this year alone, Lauren, to make a grand gesture towards the Anglican community. He went to the Anglican Church here in Rome, and he said if he is able to go to South Sudan for the first time ever, he wants to bring the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, along with him. So making concrete steps towards unity.
Very quickly, we have just a few seconds. What else is the royal couple doing?
Well, we know that today Prince Charles went to an English school, a British school here in Rome that educates children. And then later he went to the Catholic seminary for the UK and Britain and Wales, where they educate their seminarians in the Catholic faith. So he visited that Catholic seminary before heading over here to meet with Pope Francis. When they arrived here at the Vatican, they went into the secret archives, which means documents reserved just for the Vatican or the Holy Father, and they saw some historic documents, including, for example, Mary Queen of Scots, the last letter that she ever wrote in her life before she was executed. So many interesting things. They spent about an hour in there in the archives and the Vatican Library, and then came to meet with Pope Francis. Tomorrow they head off for Austria on the last leg of this European tour. Okay, thank you so much, Mary Shevlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Coming up, 40 days for life. The Bishop of Arlington prays for an end to abortion. And finding faith in the midst of devastation.
I think so. People will believe in God cannot be poor.
Our special report on the ground in Haiti. The Trump administration cuts funding to the United Nations Population Fund. It says the agency supports population control programs in China that include forced abortion. The State Department says instead it will give the money to the U.S. Agency for International Development. The UN denies it is involved in China's policies. Arlington, Virginia Bishop Michael Burbidge prays the rosary outside an abortion clinic as part of the 40 Days for Life campaign.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Dozens of supporters met with Bishop Burbidge at the Falls Church Health Care Center outside of Washington, D.C. Bishop Burbidge says he wants to support the most vulnerable human beings in our society.
We know that sadly in our culture, in our nation, the unborn is not legally protected. And so we are here praying that hearts will be transformed, and we know that whenever we offer God these prayers, the Lord will use them in miraculous ways.
Bishop Burbidge joined the diocese in December and says he's had a wonderful experience. Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput's new book, Strangers in a Strange Land, takes on Catholic life and Christianity in today's society. And guess what? We are honored to welcome Archbishop Chaput, who's also a member of the EWTN board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. I am happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Strangers in a Strange Land. I went through it, you can see with all of my notes here. You write that society is shunning religion, and I think that's what Strangers in a Strange Land mean. You paint a dire picture of religion in today's society. Is it really that bad?
Well, it depends on what you compare it with. It's certainly a bad situation compared to the situation of the church in my youth. We used to have the Catholic churches full. 75% of our Catholics went to Mass every week. In some parts of the country, it's in the 20%.
This was
range.
Kansas?
This was in Kansas, but I think it was true everywhere across the United States. So if you look at it just in terms of the polls and statistics, we're in a much more difficult situation now than we were before.
You called television the biggest legal narcotic. I don't know if I agree with that, but you also said cohabitation, eugenics, abortion, all of these issues are relating to the issues that we're having with the church and that society is having. You point to same-sex marriage as a defining moment, recent moment in our culture, in the destruction of Christian Catholic culture. And politicians and Americans seem to have stopped fighting the culture war. Would you say that's true?
Well, some on the side of the church seem to have stopped fighting the culture war, but the other side's fighting with new vigor. You know, people sometimes accuse me and the things I stand for as being cultural warriors, but if they're honest about themselves, they're fighting as strongly, perhaps more strongly, on the other side. So the culture war is a two-sided event. It's not like we're fighting the established situation in the United States. Everybody's trying to change it for the better from their perspective. And we know that our perspective is right because it's the perspective of Jesus Christ.
Jesus. And right, ours is better. Ours has the light of the light on our side.
The darkness, right.
So you write, this was interesting to me in the book, that patriotism is part of a genuinely Christian life. We're creatures of place. The soil under our feet matters. Home matters. Communities matter. What do you say to Americans who feel the U.S. is moving in the wrong direction and don't recognize this as the home they once knew?
Well, I tell them, first of all, that if they want to change things, they have to love the people who are their neighbors. You know, Martin Luther King said, if you want to change people, you have to love them, and they have to know that you love them. And that's really important, that they know you love them by your attitudes, by your care, and your lack of harshness in the way you exchange your points of view. But it really is important for us to understand that patriotism is a Christian virtue. When I was a kid, we studied it as part of the fourth commandment. Filial piety, loving our parents, patriotism, loving our neighborhood, is all part and parcel of the fourth commandment.
But there are some people who say that the new religion is patriotism. What would you say to that?
Well, people have said that for a long time, too. I remember during the Vietnam War, people would say, my country right or wrong. And that's not a Christian position, because if our country's wrong, if you love the country, you work to change it. So if you substitute anything for God, that's idolatry, and an excessive kind of patriotism could be idolatry.
Let's end the interview with a positive way, in addition to treating your community members as friends and letting them know that you love them, of what people can specifically do. At the end of the book, you lay out some concrete rules, and you point to the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are meant for all Christians in the routines of their daily lives. They're meant for plumbers and doctors, teachers and salesmen, mothers and fathers. Right. What did you mean by this?
Well, I think you hit an important passage in the book. Sometimes we treat the Beatitudes as ideals, you know, dreams that we should gradually work for but never expect to reach. But I think when Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount and he gave us the Beatitudes, they were marching orders on how we're supposed to live in the world. We're supposed to be different kind of creatures because of our baptism. We're supposed to begin to think like God thinks, and to love like God loves, and to act like God acts. And that makes it very different from many of the people around us.
Okay. Beautiful sentiment to end our interview. Strangers in a strange land, living the Catholic faith in a post-Christian world. Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Archbishop Chaput will celebrate a Mass in memory of Terry Schiavo, the woman who was at the center of a legal case about end-of-life issues. You can watch the Mass right here on EWTN Friday at 8 a.m. Up next, a simple shoebox, an amazing gift.
Our approach is to empower the local church and church-based ministries that are already there.
See One Catholic Group's helping hand in Haiti up close. The internet has only been around a few decades, but its patron saint lived 1,400 years ago. Today, the Catholic Church remembers Saint Isidore, Archbishop of Seville and Father of the Church. He's the patron of the internet because of his determination to use the world's accumulated knowledge for God's glory. Tonight, we bring you an EWTN News Nightly special report from Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Our journey followed the footsteps of the nonprofit Catholic group called Cross Catholic Outreach. Mark Irons was on the ground with our photographer, Tom Haller. Tell us about it.
Well, Lauren, Tom and I traveled to a remote part of Haiti with Cross Catholic Outreach. That's a relief group serving in third world countries. But Haiti is home to more than 10 million people. The unemployment rate is estimated at 40%. The people have experienced the effects of political corruption, natural disasters, health epidemics, and intense poverty. Amidst the suffering, hope thrives in Haiti's greatest resource, its people.
A narrow road winding through Haiti's southern hills
leads to a coastal city, Lakai. Here, Peter Joseph dreams of one day becoming a priest. While this 18-year-old has pious plans for the future, what he can't plan is his next meal. Peter is the youngest of 5 siblings. He gets ready for the day in a home reminiscent of an unfinished basement. A rusty aluminum roof covers the concrete walls. His mother died of an unknown illness. His father is bedridden, inches above a dirt floor. He says the family can't afford to eat every day. Peter's homeland is rich with natural beauty, but Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The majority of Haitians survive on less than $3 a day. One of the causes? Political corruption. This is the mayor in Lakai. He points his finger at selfish politicians, saying they ignore the millions who suffer. It's 4 hours by car to the capital city, Port-au-Prince. Along the road, people sell fruit and meats. Slums are separated by rivers of trash, and the nation is still recovering. 7 years after a devastating earthquake, more than 200,000 Haitians estimated dead.
Yeah, I saw that building shaking like a leaf.
Bob Panette was one of the lucky ones. He narrowly escaped a collapsing building.
Just hearing, voices everywhere of people screaming, people calling God, people saying it's the end of the world.
But disaster after disaster, including a cholera outbreak and 2016's Hurricane Matthew, can't kill Haitian resilience. And if there was ever a day these kids didn't feel sorrow, it's today. Every year, U.S. group Cross Catholic Outreach brings joy in a box to children in Lakai, including hopeful priest Peter Joseph. Packed boxes provide toothpaste, t-shirts, crayons, and toys. Peter tells me the most important thing about the box, no matter the size, is that it's a gift he'll take home. And the bigger gift to Haiti has been the international response to the country's tragedies. Some refer to it as a nation of humanitarian groups or a republic of non-governmental organizations.
There's more NGOs per person in Haiti than in any other country.
But the mayor in Lakai says this can cause problems when the humanitarian groups don't keep promises. The American Red Cross came under fire after the 2010 earthquake. 2 media reports say the group raised $500 million in relief funds, but the number of homes they built, just 6.
It really is a danger to create a dependency, a feeling that as Haitians, well, we can't do anything.
Jim Kavner is the president of Cross Catholic Outreach.
Our approach, instead of sending Americans to start new projects and run programs, our approach is to empower the local church and church-based ministries that are already there, already effectively helping the poor, both materially and spiritually.
In Lakai, Cross Catholic partnered with a Catholic orphanage and school, serving more than 400 children, called Projet Espoir, Creole for Project Hope. Here, Wagner Jean-Philippe teaches English. He wants the world to know that for all Haiti has lost, faith can be found.
We believe in God. And I think some people who believe in God cannot be poor because our Savior, our God, is not poor. So I am His son. I cannot be poor.
And Peter Joseph believes the same. He says he wants to teach his fellow Haitians that God is alive. Opening his box of joy, he shares his riches with those less fortunate than him.
While we showed you the plight of one small community, I spoke to many Haitians just like Peter Joseph who continue to be resilient no matter what, Lauren.
Mark, unbelievable what you were able to see.
It was an amazing trip.
How did it affect you?
Seeing that type of poverty for me was surreal, but what really moved me was the Haitians' reaction to it. You know, it's one thing for me to say, I have faith. It's another thing to have your faith tested over and over again and still believe that God is going to provide no matter what happens. And that's what the Haitians really believe. So I think I learned a little bit more about what real faith looks like. Real faith.
Beautiful. Mark Irons, thank you so much for that. And Tom Haller, thank you. Well, that does it for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Good night, and God bless.